Welcome to Profound Conversations.
This is Profound Conversations, and I am Dr. Mawata Kari Sankara, also known as Dr. Kevin Washington, and we're here to have a powerful discussion about the dynamics of reading. We understand that readers are leaders. We understand the power of the written word. The word that gets written lives on for perpetuity. We understand that the idea of writing is ancient, and put it into a particular documentation goes back to thousands of generations. We have to talk about the issue of the ancients of Egypt and Kemet inventing the thing called the papyrus, the paper, and inventing the first thing to write with. Therefore, the first documentation goes back there. We understand the power of Timbuktu and the volumes of books that were in that library that were pillaged by others because they did not want people to know about the intellect of African or Black people. Well, that particular destruction continues. These two brothers have engaged in the process of doing a documentary on the Black Bookstore, a place where people were able to come and liberate their minds and liberate themselves from the fetters of ignorance and their lack of self-knowledge to be able to learn certain things about what it meant to be human. The documentary is called They Said Niggas Don't Read: The Rise and Fall of the Black Bookstore. We welcome Brother Sadiq Ali and Brother Karim Ali to Profound Conversations. Welcome, brothers.
Peace and blessings.
Blessings. We appreciate that beautiful introduction.
Yeah, it was really nice. Looking forward.
That for me, it was the Black Bookstore that saved my life, whether it was Yahweh Bookstore in Washington, D.C., and Adams Morgan, Pyramid Books on Georgia Avenue, whether it was when I was in California, Oakland area, and it was Marcus Books, and it is said to be the oldest Black bookstore in the country. It started in 1960. I remember spending time with the Marcus family in the bookstore, was honored to be there. I learned so much from that family. The power of the Black Bookstore was not simply about going and reading a book. The power of that bookstore has been all over wherever I've been. It's been about connections, it's been about community, and it's been about being collective, right? And I just want to say thank you all for doing this documentary, whether it was a bookstore in the Shrine of the Black Madonna. I mean, we just went through everywhere we went to find where is the Black Bookstore, because we knew where the Black Bookstore was with the Black community. And then all of a sudden, there is the fall, the closing of these bookstores. Let's talk about your documentary. How did y'all come to get to this space to want to do this, to cover this particular topic?
Did you want me to start out? Yeah, I want to start, and I want to hand it off to my partner, Sadiq Ali, whose father actually is or was, say, the late Hodari Ali, who was founder of Pyramid Books. So I actually worked with Hodari Ali prior to his returning to the creator at the Pacifica radio station, WPFW, Washington, D.C. He had a program, radio show called The Struggle Continues. And I meant to actually name this particular episode The Struggle Continues because in this work, Sadiq is actually picking up the mantle of his father's work, in terms of lifting up, education, lifting up intellectual pursuit. And so having worked with Hodari and having attained so much respect for him as an engineer for his radio program, I became endeared with his work within Cobra and just his civic activism, community activism, and by extension, met his son, Sadiq, sometime later. And the story goes that I had a conversation with Sadiq about joining a men's group on a Zoom call during the pandemic, because we weren't doing anything, together during that time. And this group was chocked with about 30 Black men from the DMV area, the Washington, D.C. metro area, who all knew Hodari, all knew him, knew about his work. And so when Sadiq joined us for a conversation, I don't think he knew what he was actually getting into in that call. He received so much love and acknowledgement of his father's work. And I'll let him talk about the epiphany that was created at that point but it was really like the genesis of him believing that there was an homage that he needed to create for his father. And so the idea of actually creating a film was born. You want to talk a little bit more about that experience, Sadiq, and how that shaped, you know, our, you know, real interest, and then, you know, our movement towards where we are today.
Yeah, no, yeah, I say, I appreciate that introduction and your perspective of what took place as well, which is very, very closely aligned to my own recollection of that fateful day, now almost 5 years ago. And even before I go there, let me start off by saying, like, appreciate again all of the introduction, but the first thing I want to say is that these ideas are not our own, and that me and Kareem are but mere vessels that were chosen by the Creator to tell this story, and I 100% believe that. And even taking that and connecting it to the starting point of this particular story that we were chosen to tell many years before that sort of faithful invite to the Zoom, late 2020, early 21. My siblings and I were engaged in a conversation. My older brother, Hazik, shout out Hazik, and my younger siblings, Kadira and Mujahid, were engaged in a conversation several years before around what would it look like to honor our father and his work and the legacy, and to be able to tell his story and how it not only impacted us, his life's work, but how it impacted countless others, thousands of others. And inevitably, as it happens, life kind of, you know, takes over, and you sort of put great ideas on the shelf. And so I credit that invitations for sort of reawakening this idea. And again, I remember it almost exactly as Kareem laid it out. And I just remember on that Zoom call just being overwhelmed. Like, what he left out is that essentially there wasn't a dry eye in the Zoom, including myself, just based on the love that was just sort of poured out. And it was at that point like, man, I got to tell my dad's story. And as that research began, it quickly became apparent that my dad was just one branch on this tree. Hodari Ali and Pyramid Books and its forebear, Lidco, Liberation Information Distribution Company. And before that, Drum and Spear and Yahweh, like all of these entities were dots on a spectrum, specks on a continuum, or, you know, and or branches of this larger tree that really goes back, again, as you beautifully laid out, millennia to our sort of, you know, contribution to human civilization. Some would say us creating human civilization, but that's
There
another
it is.
conversation
There
for
it is.
another day. But that sort of singular moment sort of became the impetus. And I'm a big believer, and I think all of us can agree, especially those who are hearing this and seeing this, that as people of faith, you don't know how the thing is going to turn out. That's not your job to think about that. Your job is to be obedient to the idea and to the inspiration that the Creator has given. And every step of the way, as I got the inspiration, I said, Kareem, I don't know how we're going to do this, but I need you. And Kareem, to his credit, didn't bat an eye. There was no hemming and hawing. There wasn't any hesitation. He said, Sadiq, I got you. And sort of literally the rest is history. And I'll say history is not done, like Kobe said, job not done, but history in the making. And every step, as we've been obedient, has lined up and led us to this point where, Lord willing, we're on the precipice of doing something really, really special.
It is indeed special. I wanted to say this, that you mentioned that you are a conduit, right? That you simply are just carrying out the acts that have been laid out before you. I want to submit to you that some people don't submit. So even though you suggest that you're simply the conduit, to be able to be the receptacle, the vessel, to be able to one that pass it on, and to do that with humility and respect and honor speaks volumes. So many people get the frequency, but not everybody tune in and can do the dance. And so y'all are doing the dance. So that's definitely to be appreciated.
No, I really appreciate that, and I do feel like I'm a vessel. I mean, and we're learning constantly in this regard, and I believe that that's the way that we began to create a tipping point in our community, of soulfully indigenous people in America, is that we lift up our stories. And in a day and time when we're seeing educational censorship, we're seeing cultural defunding, policy rollbacks, right? The priorities around DEI, really, in a sense, an erasure or dismantlement, of the history of our people. We've got to ask the question: what happens if our stories are rewritten? What's going to happen? And then the other question is, well, what are we going to do about it? And so, I like to say to people that if you're not, moved to go to the picket line or the marches, if you're not, so moved to write to your congressman or your senators, or, to be as active as that, this is a way for you to actually be a part of a resistance to turn on the light of intellectual pursuit, amongst our people. Over the last 20 years, there has been a steady decline in literacy throughout America. The relationship that people have with the written word, I believe, with the written word is really at an all-time low, and it's something that we can begin to shift. And so the film traces the rise, cultural significance, and attempted suppression of our Black bookstores across the United States. And as we say, that once vibrant centers of knowledge, political organizing, and community empowerment, those voices that actually became or were part of environments, that really helped the light of revolution, were spaces and incubators that we intend to draw out in our film, place as character. The intent is to actually create a beautiful film, cinematically, but also with the story. And the story is as much about relationships as it is about the bookstores themselves. And so there's a lot I can say, but I want Sadiq to jump in, with some of the thoughts. Is right now it's an important time for us, in as much as we'd like to go into production for the film, and we're working to create community around this effort. And so we have a crowdfunding effort, and that we'll talk more about, I'm sure, towards the end of this segment. But let Sadiq say a little bit more about what's on his heart, and a little bit more about the film and the principal participants and what we've done so far.
Indeed.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all that, Kareem. I wanna go back to a point that you called out, and then we can talk a little bit. I know we're up against time, but when I think about what do we want to impact, jumping ahead to the end of this thing, right? Beginning with the end in mind. What do we want to be different, or what do we want folks to walk away from this project having felt, experienced, etc., right? And for me, it's 4 E's. There's this idea of edutainment, right? Shout out to one of my favorite MCs of all time, KRS-One, aka
KRS-One.
Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everybody. One of my favorite KRS-One / BDP albums was called Edutainment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I had ever heard that term before, but we want to edutain our people through this project. We want to wake folks up. There's going to be elements of the project that are wildly entertaining, but we want folks to be educated about us, our history, our contributions. Because one of the things that I'm clear about is that we, as Black folks in America, and truly a huge portion, if not the majority, of the global African diaspora, we are suffering from an epidemic of low self-esteem that was intentionally perpetuated because, as we know, it's been said that reading and the attainment of knowledge makes one unfit to be a slave. And so this chipping away at self-esteem is a big deal. And so this edutainment component of the project is critical for us. The second thing we want to do is excite folks. We want to excite folks about that history, about that knowledge that's being intentionally hidden from us. We want to get folks excited enough to take action. But this is the point that I want to connect back to what Kareem just shared a little while ago, right? When we hear details around yet another American federal government funded perpetuated scheme to denigrate, to dismantle something that was for us and by us. I want folks to be enraged at certain points of this film as well, because I believe also very fitting for the moment, not enough of us are mad right now, y'all.
That's
not
right.
enough of us are mad, or else
That's
this
right.
madness would not be allowed to continue. And so definitely a part of me wants to leave folks just a little bit upset, right? Because as we know, James Baldwin said, right, to be even a modicum of aware in America as a Black person, you're perpetually enraged. And we should be at what has happened. And then the last E, y'all, is we want to encourage folks to take action. We want to encourage folks to recapture their own legacy of literacy. We want to encourage folks to build that muscle with their own families. We want to encourage folks to go and lift back up those bookstores that, not to get too far ahead. We have a resurgence of Black bookstores actually right now in this moment. And so we want to encourage folks to go and get in the game in that regard as well. And so that's a little bit about what we're thinking about, just in terms of like what we want folks to be feeling about this thing. And then the last thing I'll note is just, us as students of history, everybody again on this line right now, and again, tons of the listeners. I know the audience of Profound Conversations are an erudite, learned crowd. And so as such, students of history must be connecting the dots between all of what both of you all mentioned initially around those ancient African empires. But even going back to the civil rights movement, this is the new civil rights moment that we're in right now.
It is.
And this sort of information, these sorts of movements are what will carry us into the future.
Edutain. The next
it'll also be interesting. I'm sorry. It'll also be interesting to be able to write to and then to illustrate the through line from what was happening during the time of COINTELPRO, which at that time, Black bookstores actually became targets under surveillance, by the federal government as threats. The through line from that era to today. And that thinking. And so I go back to that question, well, what are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about, this effort to further sort of dismantle and disconnect, our ability to really connect to our history? Because we know that's where power lives. The minute that I really understood who I was a part of, even just my family, I became a much more powerful person because I understand that it wasn't just me. And so, this is about resistance, and this is about really fortifying our community, bringing us together under a tent that I believe everybody can get behind.
Powerful. Yes. Resistance. This is a moment where people are banishing books and taking literature out, which we know that changes consciousness. And when you control somebody's consciousness, you control what they do. David Walker talked about this, but also we have Dr. Carter G. Woodson says that when you control a man's thinking, you don't worry about his actions. And so when you have content that can control your thoughts and processes, then you can have the miseducated Negro. This documentary is called They Said Niggas Don't Read, right? The Rise and Fall of the Black Bookstore, the places that people gathered to have a level of being uplifted. And so this is what we've heard about, right? The importance of these particular zones of liberation. We know that the Dogon talked about the power of the spoken word, and also the word once spoken, when it's written, it lives on for perpetuity. And so when people can begin to control your future, they can control everything about you by saying that you will not get this in your present, and therefore you have no past. And we recognize then that when people feel like they have no past, no present, and no future, they begin to live in despair. But when you have zones of liberation, spaces where people can come, collect, commune, get educated, edutain, can be enraged. And I submit to you that there is nothing wrong with being mad. Mad simply means make a difference. That when you get information that tells you to make a difference, then that's when you become what you have been born to become. That is a human being elevating change, being a change agent to make this place better than it was before you got here. This is Profound Conversations. Sadiq Ali and Karim Ali, thank you all so much for sharing. This is to be continued because we have to then talk about the documentary and its impact. And I would love to talk about having these focus groups around the country when people experience it and what comes up for them. Profound Conversations. Thank you all, brothers, for doing this powerful work.
Thank you for joining our Profound Conversation. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe to our podcast and then gift this information to a friend or family member using the share button.